The explosions of Japanese bombs struck without warning on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941, a day in which President Franklin D. Roosevelt claimed would live in infamy, and he was right. 83 years later, veterans and others continue to honor those who lost their lives and gave so much during the Second World War to keep our nation free.
We humble ourselves in thy presence to lift up and remember those who lost their lives during the attack at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, a day that will forever live in infamy. Help us refrain from indifference or become forgetful of the sacrifices they made that day.
A solemn but honorable ceremony was held by veterans organizations at Tonaquint Park Cemetery at 10:48 a.m., recognizing the exact time of the event. Flags were raised to full staff and back down again in honor of those who lost their lives for us to gain freedom during a war of many.
Aim! Fire! Aim! Fire! Present! Mark!
May we never forget that more than 2,000 of our sons, fathers, brothers, and friends were killed that day, and the 1,000+ who were wounded. Help us, Father, to always honor and remember these brave American souls and declare with reverence that their sacrifices were not in vain, for they defended America's freedom and demonstrated Americans' goodness.
Retired U.S. Army veteran Terry Dunn was chosen to place the wreath at the granite tombstone in honor of those who were there.
I've laid the wreath once before, and it brought tears to my eyes to lay that wreath and to think about what these individuals went through on December 7th, 1941. That was a year before I was born. When I think about all those people, men and women both, on those ships and on the shore, and at the air bases there where the planes were parked in a nice row so they could blow up a lot of them in a short period of time. Luckily for us, the Japanese failed to target the fuel tanks. So that made we could still function with those.
Inscribed on the sides are the names of those Pearl Harbor veterans who were there at that time.
Also give thanks, Father, for those who survived the attack, who went on with their lives in a way that portrayed honor and conviction to a world that was watching. Their bravery, commitment, and courage carried on, despite the haunting memories of what they saw, what they heard, and what they felt.
Among those present at the ceremony was retired Navy Commander Tony Moore, who is now the state officer at the Veterans Home in Ivins.
I served 20 years in the Navy on active duty. I served on 4 different submarines. I was stationed in Pearl Harbor once, so I did get to see, the memorials there in Pearl Harbor. Very solemn. We owe them a debt of gratitude for those that lost their lives on that day and really during all of World War II. The submarine force, especially in the Pacific, really turned the tide of the war for the United States. When the Japanese, of course, destroyed our aircraft or our battleships, we the United States decided to go with aircraft carriers after that. But the submarine force also was able to destroy many of the enemy fleets in the Pacific, and it was allowed us to advance and move towards them, which really put them on their heels and eventually led to their surrender, while at the same time we were simultaneously fighting, in Europe, in Germany and whatnot. So
we humbly ask that you keep us from harm, but also alert and prepare to defend our country when it becomes necessary, as those have done before us. Continue to be a presence in our lives, Lord, and bless our country with your tender mercy and grace.
The Dixie ROTC was present at the event, carrying on the legacy of keeping the tradition alive amongst the youth.
The reason that I'm here today is for the attacks on Pearl Harbor, and the attacks on Pearl Harbor were really big impact on the United States. It was a very big shock to everybody. And they were dropped on a Sunday morning when nobody was suspecting a thing. Everybody was in their homes enjoying their quiet time, and they got bombarded with bombs, and we've lost thousands of soldiers and hundreds of civilian lives. And I think that it's not something that should be forgotten, and I will do my best to find places and times where I can go to memorialize it.
For some, D-Day is a time to remember their loved ones who served in the military, as they will never be forgotten. And while the crowd at this event keeps getting smaller each year, it's the hope of all veterans that those who sacrificed all will never be forgotten.
For us to remember celebrations and have celebrations to remember our heroes that came before us, all the way back, even to the Revolutionary War.
From Tonaquint Cemetery in St. George, Melissa Anderson, Community Education News.